So in Chapter 3, Dan Gilmore discusses this idea of using Wikipedia and whether journalists or just really anyone should use it as a primary source. And, he says that it should be used as a starting point, but then you need to go and do more research, see where this information is coming from, look at the primary resources, where it's coming from, and go from there. So, I totally agree with this because we are told even in our classes, you can't use Wikipedia as a primary source. You can use it as a starting point, yes. Brainstorm, look up topics, get some information, but then, use databases, more credible articles for your research. And Dan Gilmore, goes in talking about how these newspapers around the world had actually used Wikipedia as their primary source and had used this fake quote that was published in Wikipedia in the obituaries of a famous French composer. And this just, once again proved that these journalists weren't doing their jobs right and looking up the information, doing more research, double-checking facts, and they just used Wikipedia as a primary source. So this goes back to us media literates needing to be aware of the situation, of knowing that these mistakes do happen, and that you need to be on the lookout for them, and that you need to be looking into other resources, other newspapers, to see what is being said about a certain story that you're interested in, to see if what you first read, is credible or not. Because even these newspapers like The Guardian, the London Independent, BBC, were the ones that had used this fake quote and had published it. And that is kind of crazy because a lot of people use, these news sources like The Guardian or the London Independent as their primary source of information, of news. They go in there thinking that these people are very credible, they have professional people working for them, and that, what I'm reading on my computer screen about this news story is true. Turns out, they do make mistakes as well, which is, again, can be normal. As a journalist myself, I have made mistakes, but the point here is that we can't just let this, happen. We need to be critics of the media. We need to let them be aware, look, you should have done your job better because that will only benefit you and it will benefit me as the reader. So this should be a goal of journalists to be always constantly double checking everything, to not just use, whatever they find and put it in a story, because once again, Wikipedia is changing, constantly what they put on there, and the editors did actually change that quote several times, like according to Dan Gilmore. So it's just very important for us media literates or journalists to, not use Wikipedia as a primary source and to use other more credible resources for their stories.